One co-star hit Stallone so hard during filming that his heart slammed into his ribcage. He spent 4 days in intensive care with a blood pressure of 260. Another megastar tricked Stallone into making his worst movie ever. It took 20 years before they could even be in the same room. But the worst betrayal? A close friend who Stallone accused of sleeping with his wife? The friend denied it. But Hollywood never forgets. Stallone made enemies of some of Hollywood's biggest names. And the reasons will shock you. Sylvester Stallone was born on July 6, 1946, in Hell's Kitchen, New York, and his entrance into the world was anything but easy. The doctor delivering him used forceps during birth, and they accidentally cut a nerve on the left side of his face. That's why Sylvester Stallone grew up with a drooping left eyelid and slurred speech. These features would one day make him famous in movies like Rocky, but as a kid, they made him stand out in the worst way. Other children bullied him, and casting agents rejected him for looking and sounding off. Life was hard at home, too. His mother, Jackie, had grown up in an orphanage without much warmth. That lack of care followed her into motherhood, leaving Stallone feeling alone most of the time. What shocked people even more was a confession Jackie made years later. She had tried to end her pregnancy with Stallone using dangerous methods, even coat hangers. Stallone himself said that she told him, "The only reason you're here is because the hanger didn't work." That wasn't all. Jackie threatened him with crazy punishments, like leaving him by an open window in the dead of winter if he misbehaved. Growing up in that kind of fear shaped him. It toughened him up, but also left deep scars. It's no surprise he was drawn to playing underdogs who fought against all odds, because that was his own life. His parents fought all the time. His dad, Frank Stallone Sr., was a hairdresser and a polo player, a strange mix of flashy and brutal. The two of them split up when Stallone was 11, and from then on he lived mostly with his father. Even before that, he had spent part of his childhood in boarding care because nobody was really there for him. The problems followed him to school, too. Stallone was kicked out of 14 different schools for acting out. Feeling like an outsider became part of who he was. Even his name felt uncertain at first. His father had thought of naming him Tyrone, after a famous actor, Tyrone Power. But at the last second, he chose Sylvester instead. Stallone's middle name, Gardenzio, came from his Italian roots. Throughout childhood, he was called Binky, but once he started school, he quickly decided that wasn't going to work. He changed it to Mike, hoping to fit in. Every name he went by was an attempt to find some version of himself that felt like it belonged. By the time he was in his 20s, Stallone was so broke and desperate that he agreed to do a soft-core porn film called The Party at Kitty and Studs in 1970. It paid him $200 for 2 days' work. At the time, he was sleeping in a bus station in New York City after being evicted. It was either do that movie or rob someone, Stallone later said. That $200 was the only thing standing between him and starving. Around that time, he had to sell his dog, Butkus, for $50 just to buy food. Stallone called this period the lowest point in his life. The movie was hardly anything, just crude and cheaply shot. It would have vanished forever if Rocky hadn't become a hit years later. Then someone dug up that old film, renamed it The Italian Stallion, and tried to cash in on Stallone's new fame. Before Rocky changed everything, Stallone bounced around Hollywood hoping to catch a break. After studying drama at the University of Miami, he took any role he could get. In 1971, he showed up as a subway thug in Woody Allen's Bananas and a club patron in Clute. Woody Allen had even turned him down at first, saying he didn't look tough enough. Stallone kept begging until he was cast. Even with these small roles, most of the time he was broke. To survive, he cleaned lion cages at the Central Park Zoo and worked as a theater usher. By 1973, Stallone was living on $106 in his bank account, with a pregnant wife at home and $300 in rent due. In 1974, Stallone finally caught a small break in The Lords of Flatbush. It wasn't a huge film, but it gave him his first real role and a chance to write some of his own dialogue. The movie was set in 1950s Brooklyn, and Stallone played a greaser named Stanley Rosiello. This part suited him perfectly. It showed him the power of writing for himself, too, something that would matter even more when he created Rocky just a few years later. The Lords of Flatbush gave Stallone a taste of real acting and writing success. In those early years, Stallone did whatever it took to keep going. He worked as a fish cutter in a deli, a night watchman, and a delivery boy. After long shifts, he would sneak into movie theaters to record dialogue and practice writing his own scripts. Stallone cranked out 5 screenplays before Rocky, all of which went nowhere. But every failed script was training for what would come. In 1974, on the Brooklyn set of The Lords of Flatbush, everything changed during one tense lunch break. Sylvester Stallone and Richard Gere were both unknown actors then, both hoping for their big shot. From the first day of rehearsals, they never clicked. Gere was all swagger, and Stallone thought he was impossible to work with. Stallone would later describe Gere as acting like a knight in a motorcycle jacket, which only made him more irritated. That day, they ended up sitting in a small car to eat. Stallone had a hot dog. Gere had a chicken sandwich dripping with mustard. Stallone told him to be careful. Gere ignored him and took a big bite. Grease and mustard squirted right onto Stallone's new trousers. Without thinking, Stallone elbowed him hard in the head and pushed him out of the car. It happened so fast that the rest of the crew could only stare. From that moment, the tension was real. Gere was fired on the spot and replaced by Perry King. Stallone told everyone it had to be one of them leaving, and he wasn't going anywhere. That fight wasn't just some childish scuffle. It was a breaking point that ended Gere's role in the film and shaped Stallone's reputation as someone who wouldn't take disrespect. The story spread through Hollywood like wildfire. Gere was humiliated, and Stallone had proven that nobody messed with him. Even as they both became famous later on, they never forgot that moment. Over the next 50 years, they kept their distance. Stallone even said Gere hated him forever after that day. Rumors grew too. One of the strangest was the so-called gerbil story, an urban legend that Gere always thought Stallone had started. Stallone denied it for decades, but Gere was convinced. Every time they crossed paths in Hollywood after that, the tension was still there. Even big parties weren't safe. In 1993, they nearly fought again at a dinner thrown by Elton John. Princess Diana was at that party, and Gere hit it off with her by the fireplace. Stallone had hoped to do the same. Watching Gere and Diana grow closer, Stallone was furious. According to Elton John and his partner David Furnish, the two actors disappeared into a hallway at one point. They were on the edge of a fight before Furnish stopped them. Stallone left in a rage after dinner, and Gere stayed with Diana as if nothing happened. It was just one more chapter in a long, strange rivalry that had started with a ruined pair of trousers. Stallone would eventually become a global star, especially after creating Rocky. On March 24, 1975, he had watched Muhammad Ali fight Chuck Wepner, an unknown brawler nicknamed the Bayonne Bleeder. Ali was expected to knock him out in a few rounds. Instead, Wepner lasted all 15 rounds and even knocked Ali down once. Ali won by TKO in the last 19 seconds, but Wepner's heart amazed Stallone. At the time, Stallone was broke and had even sold his dog for $50 just to buy food. That fight gave him the idea for Rocky, a story about a nobody fighter going the distance. Stallone wrote the Rocky script in just 3.5 days. Studios loved it and kept offering him money for the script, up to $360,000, but they didn't want him to star in it. Stallone was determined, telling them they could have the script for free if they let him play Rocky. Finally, they agreed, but only if the film was made for under $1 million. Stallone was paid just $35,000 for everything, including acting. Despite the tiny budget of $960,000, they pulled it off. Rocky became a surprise hit, earning $225 million worldwide. It was nominated for 10 Academy Awards and won 3, including Best Picture. Stallone was nominated for Best Actor and Best Screenplay, making him one of only 3 people, after Charlie Chaplin and Orson Welles, to do that. Almost overnight, Stallone was a star. He kept going too. Rocky became a franchise with sequels and spin-offs. Stallone directed some of them himself and built a career that spanned decades. From Rambo to The Expendables, he was always the tough guy who wouldn't quit. And all that started with an underdog story he wrote when he had just $106 to his name. The rivalry between Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't just a silly Hollywood story, it was real. It started in the late 1970s and burned for years. The first real fight happened at the 1977 Golden Globes. Stallone was up for 6 awards for Rocky, but he only won 1. Schwarzenegger, who had won an award for Stay Hungry, laughed at him. Stallone was so mad that he threw a vase of flowers at him. From that moment, Stallone said they felt violent hatred, and it felt like their DNA was against each other. Stallone even admitted, "We couldn't stand to be in the same galaxy." Both were obsessed with beating each other. Bigger muscles, bigger guns, more kills, and bigger box office hits. Every choice they made was partly about topping the other. They tracked each other's careers carefully. It was personal, and it was ugly. That hate wasn't only about muscles and movies. It became psychological warfare. Stallone and Schwarzenegger went after each other in ways most people never saw. They competed for better bodies and larger-than-life action scenes. But in 1992, Schwarzenegger pulled one of his most famous tricks. Stallone was offered a script for Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. Schwarzenegger pretended to love the project and leaked fake rumors that he was dying to do it. Stallone rushed to sign on because he thought Schwarzenegger was interested. Only too late did he realize that Schwarzenegger had set him up. The movie was terrible. Stallone won a Razzie for Worst Actor, and it became one of the most embarrassing roles of his career. Schwarzenegger was proud of it, later laughing that it was 100% true. That was just one example. They also told lies to studios, played tricks on agents, and manipulated every part of Hollywood to make the other one look bad. But all of that started to change in 1991. They weren't making up on a film set, but in a business meeting. Schwarzenegger was launching Planet Hollywood. Their mutual lawyer suggested bringing Stallone in. Schwarzenegger was hesitant at first, but then he realized this could end years of crazy fights. Bruce Willis also joined them. The restaurants became a hit, and these old enemies had to work together, travel together, and promote together. Being forced to spend time as business partners slowly broke the wall between them. They realized they had more in common than they thought. Schwarzenegger said later that he was tired of the games and wanted to move on. What was once bitter hate began to fade. That was the most surprising part. They became real friends. Once they broke the ice with Planet Hollywood, they kept going. They even made movies together, like The Expendables series and Escape Plan in 2013. Fans loved seeing them side by side. The cameras caught a chemistry that showed real respect. Schwarzenegger even said Stallone had made him better by being his rival. Stallone agreed, saying that their competition had kept him going. Today, they seem inseparable, often appearing together at premieres or joking with each other on interviews. Back in the early 1980s, Sylvester Stallone and Eddie Murphy were two of the biggest stars in Hollywood. Stallone was famous for action hits like Rocky and Rambo. Murphy was the funny guy from Saturday Night Live and 48 Heat. Churchers. Even though they came from different worlds, they clicked. Both had fought their way to the top in a tough business, and that gave them common ground. They were close enough that they even talked about making a new Godfather film together. They imagined a third part of the saga, with Al Pacino joining them. It was an exciting idea. Stallone didn't usually like sharing the spotlight, but with Murphy, it felt different. Stallone showed Murphy the ropes of the business side of Hollywood. Murphy kept things light, making Stallone laugh when things got serious. That's why what happened next was such a shock. Rumors started going around that Murphy was having an affair with Stallone's wife, Bridget Nielsen. The talk came at a terrible time. Nielsen had been hired to play a villain in Beverly Hills Cop 2, which was released on May 20th, 1987. Murphy was the star. Stallone was nowhere to be seen. Even though Murphy had helped get her the part as a favor to Stallone, things backfired. The set was full of whispers. Some said Nielsen was also involved with the director, Tony Scott. It was impossible to know what was real. Nielsen was a big name, and so were Stallone and Murphy. The tabloids ran with it. Beverly Hills Cop 2 went on to make $299 million worldwide. But behind the scenes, Stallone and Murphy's friendship was crumbling. Then came the famous phone call. Stallone was furious. According to stories told later, he accused Murphy directly, "You F-cat my wife." Murphy was shocked. In a 1989 interview with Rolling Stone, he remembered saying, "Down, brother, I didn't F-K your wife." Murphy denied it all, but Stallone was past the point of listening. Even if Murphy was telling the truth, it didn't matter. The seed of doubt had been planted. That one phone call changed everything. Rumors had turned into rage. And even if nothing happened, Stallone felt betrayed. What made it worse was how fast their friendship fell apart. That kind of fight is brutal in any circle, but in Hollywood, everyone watches. Gossip spreads like fire. Stallone and Murphy began avoiding each other. Stallone would leave parties if Murphy showed up. Years later, Murphy told Rolling Stone that Stallone believed the rumor. "He thought I F'd his wife," Murphy said. "We liked each other too. But after that, it was ruined." Stallone never seemed to move past it. Even though they had built up a friendship and talked about working together, it all disappeared because of one accusation. When First Blood hit theaters on October 22, 1982, nobody could have guessed how huge it would become. It was adapted from David Morrell's novel and introduced audiences to John Rambo. Unlike most action heroes at the time, Rambo wasn't a wisecracking tough guy. He was a Vietnam War veteran carrying deep trauma. The film showed him dealing with post-traumatic stress at a time when PTSD was only officially recognized as a psychiatric diagnosis in 1980. One of the most powerful scenes shows him having flashbacks triggered by police brutality, bringing all the horrors of war flooding back. It felt raw and real in a way most action films didn't. First Blood went on to earn $163 million worldwide and became the 7th highest-grossing movie of the year. It was also the first Hollywood blockbuster to be released in China, where it broke ticket records that lasted for decades. That success led to a franchise spanning 5 films across 37 years. Even as the movies became louder and more explosive, Rambo's personal struggle was always at the heart of the story. The moment where Rambo breaks down to Colonel Troutman about his pain and isolation is still one of the most powerful scenes in action cinema. By the mid-1980s, Stallone was everywhere. After First Blood, his paychecks skyrocketed. He earned